Hey guys. Okay, so here's what I want to talk about today. We're going to do some graphing and really get really good with our technology that we have. Because in all honesty, most times even when I graph stuff, I don't graph hardly anything by hand anymore. I mean, the amount of technology you even have in your phone is ridiculous. So a lot of the math world is actually going to this more technological like ideas. And really in this class, what I want to teach you is basically how to think about math instead of necessarily how to do any of these computations. So we're going to get really, really good with our graphing calculator. Hopefully, you have one, or you have this little thing installed on your computer, which will be helpful. So the very first thing that I want to show you today is where all these graphing functions are and how you can make your calculator show you exactly what you want, because sometimes we don't always get exactly what we're looking for. So the first button that you need to know for graphing is this y equals button. This is essentially the graph button. So if you're ever thinking I need to graph something, you hit y equals. Now it's going to give you all of these plot options. You can plot up to, I think, 10 lines on a single graph. Most times you won't need to, but you can if you want to. So we're going to plot as many lines as we can. Or not as many lines as we can, with this one line over here. So we're going to put 5. The X button is right here. The squared button is here. If you need to do a higher power than the squared, you use this caret button. So we're going to hit squared. And then plus 8. Then, after you have it entered in, we just hit the graph button. Now, when it graphs this, I really don't get a good picture. And some of you might even not see anything at all. It might just be blank. That's because we're not zoomed to the correct window. And so what a lot of people hit is the zoom button. However, you don't have any control with this, and your calculator isn't always good at figuring out what the graph should look like or what the picture should look like. So I'm actually going to go to Window, and as you can see, my window is set to kind of all over the place. The x min is negative 100, the x max is 100, the y min is negative 100, and the y max is 100. So I'm like really zoomed out. And what I want to do is zoom in just a little bit more. Because the x's control the left and right, normally you want that to be from negative 10 to 10. Because normally we want to look around the origin. We don't want to look too far this way. Now a lot of times graphs, they expand this way really quickly. So we want to zoom out this way more than the other ways. So we're going to go here. And instead of maybe going from negative 100 to 100, maybe I go from negative 50 to positive 50 and see what that does. And as we can see, oh, that gives me a really good sketch of my graph. So I'm just going to go in here and I'm just going to sketch my graph, and it makes this U shape, which I probably could figure out because this is a quadratic. And then I just put in like what my window was. Now, the next thing is, sometimes you want to know what x values you get for these y values. Now, what you could do is you could, by hand, take all of the SX's, plug them in for x here, and figure out what the y value would be. But the calculator actually already does this for you. So if we go back to our calculator, you can see right above the graph button, see that word that says table? Now, it's hard to read on my screen, but probably on your calculator, or like if you had one in your hand, it's a little bit easier. But we're going to hit second table. And you can actually see that it gives you a table where it has x and y. So I could actually scroll all the way down to the number I want, which is 100. But that's going to take a while. So instead of that, above graph is the table button. Above window is the table set button. Now when I hit second, table set, it says where it wants to start by, and that triangle is how much it changes by, so it's just how much it counts by. So if you want it to count by maybe 5s or 10s or 20s, you can get it to count by different things. So we're going to, instead of starting at 17, we want it to start at 100, because that's the first number I have. Then I just hit second table again, and we can see that we have these numbers right here that we could write in, which I'm not going to write all of them in. Let me just write that first one because I can remember that one. But yeah, so that's the essential process. Let's do one more so we can get a better idea of this, but that's what I'm going to have you do today. I'm just going to have you plug in the function, graph it, set the appropriate window so you can see it, and then use the table to find the information you need to find. So let's do one more. Okay, let's see if we can get a nice graph of this one. So the first thing, again, what I want to do is I just want to type this function in. So I hit y equals again, I'm already there. And then we want the sign button. You can see the sign is right here, so I'm going to hit sign. 2x, so 2, and then the x button's right here. And then we'll close the parentheses and hit graph. Now again, you can see that it looks like it's graphing something, but I have no clue what that looks like. So we're going to change our window and make it look a little nicer. So I should have this, whoops, calculator turned off. So I should have this function plugged in. And again, we saw this, but it wasn't really helpful. So let's go to the window and fix some of this. So as we can see, we're just too far zoomed out. So let's zoom in a little bit more. So instead of making my x max, or my like going this way, like to 50, let's get in really close. Let's go to 5. So we'll try -5 to 5 and see what happens. Nice, and we can see this really nice picture, and that's what the sine wave does. It kind of bounces up and down, so it's kind of a cool function. And again, we can go to second table and see some of these numbers, but our table start was way out here, so we're going to hit second table set, and we want to start at -10. And this time, see how it's counting by 5s? It's going from 10 to 5 to 0 to 5 to 10. So it's counting by 5. So instead of counting by 1s, you just tell it to count by 5s. Go to second table. And then we have our answers. And again, because it's hard for me to write on the screen at the same time I have this calculator up, I'm not going to write those in. But you can see that you could easily write it in easy enough. So that's basically how the calculator works for this. You want to just hit y equals, plug in your graph, graph it. If you get a nice picture, awesome. If you don't use the zoom button, use this window button. The x's, normally I don't change the width that I look at, but a lot of times you'll need to change the height to be able to see the picture. So generally I keep the x's from -10 to 10 and change the y's until they all work out so I can see this nice picture. Okay, so graph the different functions today. The nice part is you get an idea of what the different graphs look like. So that's all we're going to do today. See ya.